Hello and welcome to episode 30 of From the Hangar. My name is Nathan. I am your host for today. And one of the goals of this podcast is to connect you a little bit deeper with the ministry of MAF and the people behind it, obviously. And one of the things that we were talking about when I was with my team and we were coming up with this podcast was how do we include the incredible work that's being done at the hangar? And I think that this is a great episode to intro that. One of the things that you will notice is you may be hearing a little bit of construction noise behind us. It's exciting construction noise because we're actually opening up and building on some offices to our current hangar. So the way that our HQ kind of area is formed essentially is we have an administration building, which is kind of where I sit, where like our finance team sit, it's our people team, all of that. And then we have two hangars. And those two hangars house some of our airplanes, like the one that we're in currently. This was actually opened up earlier this year, late last year, maybe something like that.
Last year.
Yeah, last year. And so we have the second hangar, and then we have another hangar actually to the south of us that has some more airplanes. We do some maintenance over there, do some training over there, some offices are over there as well. And so you're hearing some exciting construction because we get to expand our space a little bit more and grow it. One of the people that actually sits over in the hangar to my right is Erick. And I'm super, super excited that you're on the podcast here today. Erick Paradizo Rivera is a flight instructor here at MAF. He serves here at the hangar at HQ and does a bunch of training. And so I'm super excited that he's the first guest that we get to kind of explain a little bit of the impact that's happening here at headquarters. So Erick, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for hanging.
Thanks for inviting me, Nathan.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Stoked to be here. Before you introduce yourself, I actually have a fun little fact for the audience. We were both started as interns in 2017.
That is right.
Yeah,
Yes, I remember now. Yeah.
Do you remember the retreat that we went on?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Murdoch
That was
Trust.
fun.
And
Yeah.
that was great. So I'm like, as I was going through and doing all my pre-show research and everything, I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, we started around the same time. That's so fun.
Yeah,
So,
I'm glad that you stay.
yeah, thanks. Me too. I'm also glad that you're here.
Yeah.
So with that, Erick, go ahead and I know you a little bit, but yeah, tell the audience a little bit about who you are and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Erick Paradizo. I have been married to my wife, Joanna, for the last 6 years. And we'll be actually 7 years at the end of this month.
Hey, congratulations.
We have 3 kids, 3 boys, twin boys, and a little one that is about 16 months old. And I was born in a small island in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, in a small town in the south of the island. Grew up to a Catholic home, no real knowledge of the love of Christ. Growing up, I enjoy aviation from early age. Throughout my life, I really felt like I really wanted to be somebody, right? I wanted to really do something out there that impact. And but at an early age, I also began to struggle with a lot of sin in my life. Alcohol was one of the things that was really heavy for me, and depression. And as a result of that, I used the alcohol as a medicine for that depression. But I was still very excited to just be somebody in life and do something impactful. So when I moved from Puerto Rico in 2010, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, because I had a friend there that offered me to stay with them, and I was very thoughtful of them. And I stayed with them, and during that time, I met somebody that for the first time spoke the gospel to me in a different way, in a way that I never heard it before. And it was all through caring and prayer. It was, hey, I see you're struggling right now, and I would love to pray for you. Can I pray for you? And I always felt like, I don't mind people praying for me. Why not? You know?
Absolutely. I'll take that.
And so I pray. This person prayed for me, and for the first time in my life, I felt like somebody cared and mattered for me. And so I went through a series of things in that year, in 2010, from 2010 to 2012, where I really felt like, this is the bottom. I hit pretty much the bottom of what can be really bad for me right
Yeah.
now. And during that time, the Lord reminded me of this person who prayed for me and cared in that time. And that was actually a supervisor of mine at work. And um, so I decided to give him a call and say, hey, I'm going through a really difficult time in my life right now. I really want to know if I really want to know that God that you know.
Awesome.
You know. And this person said, "Oh, hey, come over to my house. We can have some dinner, and you can meet my family, and maybe at the end we can read the Bible. Is that okay with you?" And I thought that would be great.
Wow.
I had this Bible, Spanish and English Bible, that a friend of mine gave me, like a year or so before.
Okay.
That was just taking dust on my table. I never read it. I never really. Again, I grew up as a Catholic, and I really never felt like that was just like. My parents went to church and all that, but never stayed. We were in and out. We really never felt like that was a thing. And so the Bible was there just collecting dust, and I grabbed that Bible from the table and I said, okay, I'm gonna just take it to my friend's house, and I guess we're gonna read something about it today. And that was the beginning of something really beautiful the Lord was orchestrating in my life. That family actually, a month later, after I was invited for dinner, invited me to live with them.
Wow.
And I was quite surprised because I was still an unbeliever, and I was still struggling with sin in my life.
Yeah.
And for this family, it was a husband and a wife and 3 kids. And I thought, man, you don't want this person that still struggles with alcohol and sin in their life to be around. And they're like, no, we do. We want you to be around. We believe this is the best place for you to be.
Awesome.
And a month later, I was on my knees giving my life to Christ in front of their couch in their living room, where they offered me to stay. And the Lord took away the alcohol desire in my life right away. Awesome. And I just celebrated 11 years in June of sobriety. And so that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Alcohol and depression. The depression actually took some time for the Lord to deliver me from that. It's interesting how you can be born in a city, but you can be isolated. And actually, we go to isolated places around the world, and these are the people who are the most family oriented. They're all together. They're working as a team. But you can be in a city and you can be very isolated. Absolutely. And that's how I grew up. I grew up in the city in Puerto Rico, and I was very isolated. And that led also, to the depression and not trust many people. So the Lord He wanted to redeem me on that area. But He wasn't just going to do that as He did with alcohol, like desire is gone. Absolutely. No, He wanted me to grow in faith. And so, through people at my church. And I remember very clearly a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, telling me, I think I know what's going on with you. And I thought, well, man, I have a lot of things wrong.
Bring them on. Let's see what's happening.
What's going on? They said, I think that you're entertaining your thoughts. I think that's what's happening to you. And once you entertain your thought in your mind, it goes down into your heart. And once it's in your heart, it becomes a stronghold. That's why you're depressed. The Lord says to take every thought captive and to put it under the obedience of Jesus Christ. Nail it under that cross. Yeah. And I was like, wow, okay. That was hard. It's very hard to do that. Yeah. But with help and the desire to just trust the Lord, and obedience, I really was able to walk in freedom from depression 2 years later after I was saved.
Awesome.
And that's my story.
I feel like there are so many things that you said there. Like, realistically, we could probably just end the episode right there, because I think you just hit so many people in so many different ways. I think one of the main things that I latched onto was this mentor of yours. And you said something that's really, really cool about how the way that he led you to Christ and the way that he really shared the gospel was through caring and prayer, right?
Right.
And I think that the thought of caring for somebody can be the largest statement that you can ever make about who Jesus is, right? And clearly that was one of the things for you, right? To the point of when you were at what you would call your lowest of lows, you knew that somebody would still care for you even in that moment. And that's like such a beautiful piece of your story that I'd never heard that before, but also like, I mean, it's encouraging to know like, yeah, man, sometimes just showing up is the best thing that you can absolutely do.
It's about being Christ, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's what he was doing. He was just being Christ and sharing his love and the love of Christ with me. And I was able to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you said something too about like, you wanted to do something. You wanted to be somebody, right? And I think it's so cool how your journey from Puerto Rico to Nashville, which, I mean, Nashville is where everybody's moving. Somebody probably watching this was like, hey, I just moved to Nashville too. Because
100 people per day move to Nashville.
It's insane, right? I mean, I'm like, I thought Boise was growing fast, and then you see Nashville and Austin, and you're like, oh boy.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool how your move to Nashville ended up putting you eventually to this space here at headquarters where you are somebody and you are doing something that is impacting generations, both directly with, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, with like your involvement in your church, but also sometimes indirectly with the pilots that you're helping train that are going to the field that then are making this massive impact in isolated places. So you came to Nashville with a purpose, and I want to get into that a little bit. So you're obviously a pilot. You're also a mechanic. You hold your A&P license as well. And what you said this earlier on of like you were always interested in aviation. Like why was that? What made you want to be a pilot? And then also then on top of that, like what led you here to MAF and serving in this way instead of so many different other ways that you could serve as a pilot?
Right. That's a good question. At an early age, I was introduced to the world of aviation.
Cool.
My grandfather was a private pilot.
Awesome.
And I believe I was probably 4 to 5 years old when he first took me on a flight. And then he would take me.
Are you kidding me?
He would let me take the controls.
Cool.
And I would fly the airplane over the coast of the island.
Oh.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, the world is so much beautiful from above, you know?
Absolutely.
And I just began to feel interested in aviation at that point.
Cool.
And then my father, if he will not take me to the airport, we will be at home building RC airplanes, remote control airplanes.
Awesome.
And that was another introduction to aviation in a different way. You know, we will be building remote control airplanes or rockets, line airplanes, paper airplanes, anything that fly.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Love
it was just like, so I was introduced to aviation in those two different ways there. And so I fell in love with it. As long as I remember, I think I wanted to be a pilot since I was 4 or 5.
Cool.
From that first introduction with my grandfather.
Awesome.
So I grew up and decided, okay, I want to go to college and be a pilot, but aviation is really expensive. So I told my family, you know, I want to be a pilot. Can I do that? And there was only one college on the north of the island that had the program, the aviation program. Very expensive, and my family, you know, we were not able to afford that.
Yeah.
So they said, well, you know, how about you can be an accountant? And I was like, okay, well, I guess I can be an accountant. And so I went to a local college in my town and to be an accountant for 1 year, and I didn't do well.
Like, this is not what I want to be doing.
This is like, I don't think this is exciting for me. And so I talked to my family again after that year, and they were like, hey, you didn't do well. This is you know, whether you go back to work and do something or, you know, but college, maybe not for you. And I said, well, I really want to be a pilot. And I want to be an airline pilot. I wasn't thinking about missions or anything. Again, I was not a believer. And so they said, well, it's really expensive. And my grandfather said, you know what? We can help. We can help with some of that. And because of my grandfather helping with funds, I was able to go to college on the north of the island.
Awesome.
It was 2 hours away, so I couldn't drive there every day. I needed to stay there.
Yeah.
So I had to go to work, and I had 3 jobs.
Oh.
Plus, I was getting, you know, college done and all that, and getting my pilot licenses. And so that took some time. It took about 5 years to get it done, but I was able to do that. And at the end of my, when I got my degree in aviation management, meanwhile, I was getting my pilot licenses at a small flight school there. I decided it's time for me to move to the United States so I can learn English.
Cool.
In Puerto Rico, we speak Spanish, and so I didn't know English, and so my goals is to become an airline pilot. And how can I do that if I don't know English? So that's when I called my friend, and they invited me to come over to Nashville, and then I continue with my aviation goals there.
Cool.
I got my commercial certificate in Nashville, and I began to fly instruct while I was there.
Cool.
I worked as a flight instructor for about 4 years, 3 to 4 years there at a flight school in Nashville, Tennessee, at the international airport. Cool. And there I gained a lot of experience.
Yeah.
While I was flight instructing, I got this call for missions. I was on my way back. I remember very clearly I was on my way back. I had 2 vivid moments that I was like, yeah, this is what I need to do. One of them was calling out for the Lord for my purpose in life. I knew the Lord saved me, but I needed to know what the purpose was in life, and I was willing to give it all for that.
Awesome.
So I cried out to the Lord. I asked, Lord, what do you want me to do? I will give up anything. And I remember very clearly feeling like the Lord speaking mission aviation, saying those words. And I just didn't know what it was. I was a brand new believer. This happened in 2013, just a year after I got saved. And what is mission aviation means, I've never been to missions. I'm a new believer. And what is this?
It's just 2 separate words that have always been 2 separate words. Right.
And so I had to go home and search it. I remember going mission aviation, and there I was, mission aviation fellowship. And I was like so amazed that there was such thing, that I could use my talents that the Lord had given me and my gifts to glorify Him. To give it back to Him.
Absolutely.
Because it's His at the end of all. It's all His. And I just thought, man, this is so exciting. I want to do this. And I looked through the requirements, and I was like, oh no, I need to become an AMP, an airplane mechanic. And so I went back to school and I got my AMP. I remember very vivid it was a dream I had. And on this dream, I remember being on missions. And in this dream, I was in missions with the Lord, which is it was like almost like a vision. And I asked the Lord in that dream while we were walking on the streets or sharing the gospel, where are we? Where are we? And He said, we're in South America. And after that, I just began to feel the call for South American mission. And later on, maybe we can talk about it too, about how the Lord led us that way. But I began to feel like, okay, I'm going to fill these requirements for MAF and join the organization. I contacted a recruiter, and the recruiter contacted me back and saying, hey, this is what you need. Let me meet with you and get all this together. And
awesome.
So the Lord kept leading me to MAF. The doors kept opening. And I needed some experience after I finished AMP school. I was fresh out of school. And MAF had an internship open for airplane mechanics. And they said you had to raise support, but, this will be a good experience for you. And that's how I ended up in Idaho. I was in Nashville, Tennessee. I was married already. My wife had called for missions. She always felt like that's what she wanted to do. And when I told her about it, it was interesting. I didn't know her parents they were in this area. I knew they were in Idaho. I didn't know where MAF was first. So I told her, MAF is somewhere in Idaho. I think and then later on I found out it was in Nampa. And she's like, oh my goodness, my parents live in Emmett, Idaho. That's like 30 minutes away from Nampa. And I said, oh, that would be cool to actually maybe ask them if we can stay with them during the time of the internship. And she's like, okay. So she called her dad, and her dad was like, of course, come over.
Awesome.
You can stay with us during that period. It was 6 months. So we packed everything. We were married for 10 months when we moved out of Nashville. Packed everything and moved to Idaho. That's incredible. Started the internship.
I love it. There was something that you said in there where you were like, I just felt like I needed to go search like mission aviation. And I naturally have this like very, very, like I hear that word, that saying, And I think of a video of Joycelyn, who passed away a couple of years ago. And I don't know if you remember this from a video that we did, but there was a piece of her story that she felt like she was walking out of a room and felt like somebody yelled, like, you should Google mission aviation, or missionary aviation, I think is what she said. And I just love the fact that everybody that ever hears that, whether it's just this thought that they have, or a voice of the Lord, or somebody that says it, they all are like, that's not a thing. Like, what do you mean? And then they Google it and they're like, this is like opening up a whole world of opportunities. So you said that and I was like, man, that's just such a unique piece of like so many people's stories within this. And maybe somebody on this podcast is going to hear like, I've never heard of missionary aviation or mission aviation, and they get the introduction to that. So you were talking about originally going to South America, and I would love to get into that a little bit. And I know that for a while you were supposed to be going to Ecuador. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that experience and kind of, I know family's a massive part of that, and I know that those two are very interwoven together. And so, yeah, if you don't mind, I would love to hear about how do you end up still in HQ?
Yeah, when we did the internship 2017, at the end of that internship, we did a technical evaluation, and I was invited to come to MAF to candidacy. And during that time, we were assigned to Ecuador. And we felt like when we came for candidacy, we kind of already, we heard other people talking about Ecuador. But also the regional director talk about Ecuador, and during that time we were like, oh man, yeah, it's South America, it's Ecuador. It helps that I know the language as well, so I can start helping as fast as I can, and because I want to help with whatever he needed to. And at that point, they needed pilots. So yeah, we told the leadership at MAF that we would love to go to Ecuador, and that time it was interesting. We heard, oh man, they haven't sent a missionary to Ecuador in years, like we don't know if this is gonna happen, but we just hold on to it. We're like, okay, and we're okay whatever the Lord send us anyway, So a few days later, they talked to us and told us Ecuador is a place for you. So we're going to send you that way. We began raising support, and during our raising support time, we found out my wife was expecting. Then later on, we found out we were expecting twins. And then later on, we found out we were expecting twins, and they were boys, and that one of them was having a birth defect that affected his abdominal area. And 1 in 500,000 babies are born with this birth defect. It's the most rare birth defect compatible with life. And so they're telling us all these things. And, we were so excited. We were having boys and twins. And it was just like, wow, this is all new to us. It was the first time we were expecting it. But at the same time, it just feels like a tragic thing that is happening to us. And but, we had, during the time we were raising support, we met with so many people. And those people, when they talked to us, they told us, we will walk this walk with you. We will help you financially, but we will also help you in prayer. And so whenever you need prayer, please let us know. So we begin to send massive emails out there to people, letting them know, hey, this is what's going on. And anyway, that year, 2018, we ended up in the hospital for 4 months. And just 2 months with my wife with the pregnancy, and 2 months with the boys in the NICU. During that time, our son we quickly saw that, what the doctors were telling us was true. But at the same time, the doctors were saying that he was not going to live for 4 days. He said his 4th day is a max that we will give him. And during that time, I remember thinking, man, I need to be in prayer, but also need to be in the Word to be encouraged, because I needed to be the husband for my wife during that time, but also I needed to stay strong, and in my faith. And so I remember reading a verse in Corinthians that says, do not place your trust in the wisdom of man, but in the power of God. And I just remember reading that and thinking what he says is, do not, put your trust in the wisdom of the doctors, but in the power of God.
Yeah.
And nothing against the doctors.
No.
The doctors were seeing what they were seeing,
Absolutely.
and they were correct in some ways. But I needed it for myself.
Yeah.
I needed to remain strong,
Yeah.
and that right there gave me the strength that I needed.
Cool.
So I kept trusting the Lord during that time. It's gonna leave. It's gonna leave no matter what, And during the time that the boys were in the NICU, they had a Archer, which is my son with a birth defect, and he had a lot of surgeries. He went through many of them, and he made it through more than 4 days. And today he's 4 years old.
Jeez.
And he is an amazing testimony to the power of God can do.
Yeah.
Many people pray for that kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate all those of you who pray for my son because he really is alive today because of the prayers you sent out there. And because of that, we were unable to go to Ecuador. We pray about it, and we felt like it was not a good idea to take our son to a place where there was not a good medical professional. And so we felt like staying in Idaho was a better idea for him. And so we talked to leadership here at MAF, and they say, hey, we have a position open at the safety department. Would you like to work for the safety department? And I have always been excited to work at the safety because there's something about safety that, I don't know, is exciting. I don't know. I just feel like I just wanted to be part of it. When they said that, my wife was like, you have shared with me many times that you would love to be in safety. And I'm like, okay, this is easy one.
I love it.
So we were in Nashville, Tennessee when we had our boys. We were there raising support. We made ourselves back here again, another move.
Yep.
And and we ended up at the safety department there for about 2 years.
Cool.
An assistant safety manager and director of safety.
Awesome.
And I did that for that time. And then after 2 years, it was interesting. I was feeling during that time, I was excited to be here and the Lord was using me, but at the same time, I was discouraged because the Lord was calling me for mission aviation, to fly airplanes, to use those gifts that He's given me to glorify Him, to share the gospel with those. Why am I sitting on a cubicle in an office?
Yeah.
I didn't see my purpose there, and I was just very discouraged at times, not always. But I will always come back home, and my wife will always encourage me and be like, you know what? This is where you wanted to be, You always felt called to MAF, and that's what kept me hanging. It's like, I am in the Lord's will. I know for sure because He called me here.
Yeah.
And after 2 years of not flying at all, the flight training department invited me to join their team.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. That didn't take too long for me to decide that, yes, I want to do that. Of course, my wife and I prayed, but it was obvious we knew this was the place for us. So we joined the flight training department, and I've been here for the last 2 years. I've been working with the training department. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. I could not imagine feeling like your purpose is to fly airplanes and then to be behind a desk. Like, I'm really, I love playing basketball. I coach basketball, and I could not imagine somebody telling me like, hey, you're not going to be able to play, coach, do it. Like, you're just going to have to take a seat on the sidelines for 2 years. Like, I would lose my mind. And so I would imagine that getting back in an airplane and getting behind the yoke was probably just like, oh, I'm back where I belong. Like, this is what I want to do.
That's actually right. Yeah. That's how I felt.
Let's talk about your current role. So you are a flight instructor. I know that you do training. You've run an Aviation 101 class for people like myself who have no idea about aviation, to teach us a little bit here at headquarters about what it looks like to fly an airplane and how that works. And I know that you do some of that. You do training both for staff members that are coming on to staff, that you do some evaluation. You mentioned technical evaluation earlier, which is a process that people go through that want to be MAF pilots. They come through and they're evaluated based on their skills that they currently possess to see if they have the skills and the certifications and the qualities that we're looking for in order to train them to be MAF pilots. And so you do that piece of the puzzle all the way through helping people once they're here to learn how to fly the way that MAF wants them to fly, and all the way through to people coming back and maybe getting current on some of their certificates. And you kind of hit a bunch of different areas. Talk a little bit about that space. Like, I know that you are even really involved with training staff members from other cultures. I know that you've had people like, I believe Zachary was probably one of your students, Zachary Francois from Haiti, and that's a really cool story of his, but also all the way through, we've had people from Indonesia coming through, and the Netherlands, and all those people. I'd love for you to just touch on your role. I kind of touched on a lot of it. But
yeah, you kind of did. Yeah.
Maybe I know you a little bit more than I thought.
Yeah, you actually, I was like quite surprised. I'm like, wow. He knows it.
I did my research.
Role, yeah. Well, my role is quite different here at MAF because of the training that I do for foreign students. We have a Cessna 172 here that we use for training. Is used mostly for FAA license conversions.
Cool.
People come here from the Netherlands or anywhere in Europe, and they need to fly our airplanes or maybe fly on one of our programs that is a Part 135 program. And they need to be FAA licensed pilots.
Yeah.
But they're not. So when they come here, what I do is I give them training. And the private certificate, that can be paperwork. We just do easy paperwork and it's done. But then they need to do an instrument rating and a commercial check ride, which is the test to become FAA pilots. So I train them to do that.
Cool.
And the training that I did in Nashville helped me so much with what I do here.
Totally.
Because that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
And so we do that in the 172, and then they transition to their 135 program or wherever the Lord is leading them to go. Yeah. So that's one of the trainings I do, the FAA license conversions. I do the technical evaluation, as you mentioned. Whenever you want to join the organization, you get all your qualifications complete and everything is done, and the recruiter says, okay, you're good to come to MAF, and mobilization training invites you over. And the technical evaluation is basically an interview. We test different things. We verify that you are knowledgeable about certain areas, aviation, that you have the technical skills to fly the airplane.
Yep.
And during that time, if you're AMP, as well, they go and take an AMP test as well. Yeah. And a psychology test during that time too. And if you pass that technical evaluation, then you're invited for candidacy, which is basically inviting you to find out who we are and if you want to join us. Yeah. And so I do that. I do basic indoctrination. I'm starting to do that now.
Cool.
So we do that on the 206, and the basic indoctrination is basically teaching you how we fly safely, how we do this. A lot of people look at our videos online and they're like, oh my gosh, how can you can take that small airplane that's incredible. Like, that's not safe.
I think that. I watch these videos all the time, so I get it.
But it's actually quite safe because we build a lot of margin in everything that we do. Yeah. And but we teach that during the course of basic induct. Cool. So that's one of the things I do as well. And the international program, which is basically, we have people, like you said, from Indonesia, from Haiti, from the Netherlands. We got people from Papua New Guinea, and they just want to find out, can we be pilots for MAF? Yeah. So they come and kind of get a little bit of an evaluation in the Cessna 172, and I can tell them where they're at.
Cool.
Whether if they need more training or if they're ready for technical evaluation, things like that. And people that come over from overseas and they need a proficiency check, things like that. People are being pilot with us for a long time. I do those too. So
awesome. One of the things I just love about MAF that we touch on a good amount, but the local staff or the national staff that we employ in the countries that we serve in, and I love the fact that people that have worked within our programs sometimes have a passion that's like, man, I want to be a pilot too. And we give them that opportunity for them to come. And like you said, they get a chance to come look and see if they have the skills currently, or if they need to go and get a little bit more training or what. And it's just so cool. Like, I think of Zachary Francois so much, of just like the fact that he is now going to be able to, when we reopen the Haiti program, whenever the Lord lets us do that, to be able to serve in the country that he's from, and serve his people is just going to be such a cool full circle moment. Like you were a part of that. Like you were a part of his story coming to MAF, whether it's through his mechanics and A&P licensing and helping out with that all the way through to checking him out and being like, now you have what it takes to be an MAF pilot. And,
Yes.
that's such a cool piece of the puzzle.
And that's an encouraging thing because I really felt like I am a mentor here.
Cool.
And the Lord has called me to speak life.
Yeah.
And that's the fulfilling promise right there. I feel like I have been able to mentor and speak life to them, and they can go out there in the world, right, and do the same.
Yeah.
Mentor others and speak life to them through the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about your role, who you are as a person. I'd love to get to know you a little bit beyond the office, right? Or I should say beyond the cockpit. Talk to me about like, what's a day outside of the office look like for Erick Paradizo?
I do a stand-up comedy. No, I was kidding.
I was like, I would believe it. I think you're funny.
No, I don't do stand-up comedy yet.
People are probably behind watching on their computers, just like, hey, that guy's funny. You should.
Anyways, no, I like to spend time with my family. Outside of MAF, that's what I do. I would go and take my boys out to blast off rockets in the park.
Awesome.
I have an RC airplane. I'm still finishing it and hoping I can take it out there and take the boys. I feel like that was very impactful when I was a kid.
Yeah.
One of the things I enjoy doing with my dad. And so camping in the backyard with the boys, I love doing that.
Love it.
And I took them actually camping last weekend for the first time outside of the backyard. And they did well. So
awesome.
I'm looking forward to some camping trips
Cool.
ahead. So I love playing music and playing worship with my wife. We love doing that together. Softball, playing softball. That's something I like to do outside of work if I have the opportunity. Awesome. And my wife and I try to be involved in other ministries if we can.
Cool.
But right now it's a season of parenting.
Totally.
It's quite hard. It's
a full-time job in and
most
of
of
itself.
Most of the time we do is just be parents and
Totally.
be there for the kids.
Totally. You and I talked off camera a little bit about our the common ground that we have about reading and how we don't necessarily read, which I've already said that in previous episodes, and I'm just apparently just wanting to bring it back up again. But you did share that you like to listen to like podcasts and some music, and like what kind of podcasts are you into? What kind of music do you like to listen to? Talk to me.
It's interesting. I like Flying Instructor podcast,
Cool.
More Ride Rudder. I like to listen to that. It's for flying instructors. Parenting podcast, Empower Homes, things like that. I like those. Any aviation.
Awesome.
Podcast related.
Yeah.
Books, I like not to read books, but I can listen. I can listen to books. So Audible is good for that. Anything that is Team Keller related is always good. Yeah. I love those books.
So great.
Yeah. So, those are, and music. I like to listen to worship a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What kind of artists are you listening to these days?
Cody Carnes is a good one. I like the With the Kingdom. I like their music too.
Awesome.
A little bit of rock and that.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. A little bit more fun. Not just always the calm stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, the last question that I have for you is a little bit more about just kind of your role and how you see, your role and your calling being fulfilled. So you obviously mentioned early on that you wanted to be somebody and that you wanted to do something in this world. And I think that you have such a unique space in flight instructing of really having impact all around the MAF world because of the people that you're able to train and because of the people that you're able to help fulfill their calling as well. I guess just kind of like a more introspective question of like, how do you see your impact? Like what do you see your impact or if you were to leave MAF today, what's your impact like? I would just love to hear kind of more about how you feel like you are being used in the MAF world, all from headquarters.
It's a good question. I think that making disciples, I think that I'll be happy to know that I made disciples and I send them out there to serve around the world to the ends of the earth. I think that that's the main thing I will take from that, that to know that, they went out there and shared the gospel and as a result, they saw people isolated people change their lives. And we do that through aviation,
Yeah.
by working together, bringing help, hope, and healing.
Mm-hmm.
So just the fact that I know I did that,
Mm.
that brings fulfillment to me.
Absolutely.
And it's always exciting to hear from my students later on. It's like, hey, look at what I'm doing, or it's like,
Mhm.
hey, listen to this story and to know I was part of their journey. That's amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'll be happy if I leave MAF today because I know I did the work.
Absolutely.
But I'm not leaving MAF.
No, I didn't think you were.
Okay.
No. If it helps, I don't think either one of us are. So there's that piece of it too. But yeah, I just think if I can encourage you at all, I know that this is a podcast for everybody else, but I'm going to use this for you. Yeah, like the impact that you are having is going to be generational, right? Because
Right.
the work that you are doing to train pilots to make sure that those people are serving in a safe and responsible way, that are flying airplanes in the way that we need them to fly and doing it in a safe manner, is impacting people all around the world, and it's changing communities, right? The way that our pilots are interacting with people, and the people that we're able to bring into these places of isolation, you're allowing that to happen. And that's really cool that there are going to be people for decades to come that will be, because an MAF pilot was able to bring a Bible translator to this place, and that MAF pilot happened to be trained by you. That's pretty cool. So good
Well,
work.
I'm glad that the Lord is using me, and it's amazing to know that your impact locally can make an impact globally. And I don't have to worry about whether if I can go overseas or not, knowing that I can make an impact here today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's the perfect ending to our podcast. So, Erick, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for taking the time to share your story and to open yourself up to sharing your past, and also sharing kind of what the future looks like for you as well, and just hanging out. I always love hanging out with you.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, man.
With that, thanks so much for taking the time to watch or listen. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed, click the notifications bell. Yes, I'm hitting you with the things that every YouTuber says, but I'm going to do it anyways, just to remind you that hopefully you won't miss an episode like this, because I don't want you to miss this. If you're listening on Apple, if you're listening on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts, and you want to see the set, by all means, come to our YouTube, Mission Aviation Fellowship, take a look at our set, or you can just keep listening to us. Hopefully we're encouraging and fun enough for you to keep listening. With that being said, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out. Once again, this is From the Hangar. My name is Nathan, and we will see you soon for episode 4. This is episode 3, and we are out of here. Thanks.